Perfect. Good day, everyone. My name is Jean-Francois Legourd from Board of Innovation. You can call me JF. I'll be your moderator for today. For day 2 of the International Design Conference, Design Futures, a better normal by design, our topic will revolve around circular economies. What are they? What does it mean for the creative industry? And more importantly, what can we do? Today, we are joined by Celia Elumba of the Philippine Textile Research Institute, Karen Gibbs of Bayan Consulting, and Anna Lagon from Bio Manila Inc. All these 3 amazing ladies will show how circular economies can uplift local businesses and create better opportunities for all. But before anything else, I would like to thank the partners of the IDC who help us make the 2020 sessions a reality. Our official media partner is Adobo Magazine, and the event partners are the British Councils and Buen Salido Architect. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment that down below. You have a little box, or just take note of them, and you can we can discuss them later during our Fireside Chat with all the speakers of today. I'll be the first speaker, and then it will be followed by Karen and Celia. To get us warmed up, we have a small poll question, and I'm sure it's going to appear on your screen right now. What type of Filipino entrepreneur are you? A warrior, meaning you eat 2 ballots and 1 lechon before your morning marathon, and you want 10 more. Answer 2, you're a tech star. You shop in the dark net with your smart glass using Bitcoin, yet Windows keep crashing. That's normal. Answer 3, you're a workaholic. You're on 3 Zoom conferences in parallel, 12 PowerPoint, and you find your spouse using a VLOOKUP formula in Excel. And number 4, you're a millennial with a life after work, and who decided to schedule a meeting at 10 a.m. instead of 2 p.m. So we should have a result from the first questions already. Who do we have on the call today? Are the results ready yet to the tech support? Let me see. Can you display the results so I see a little bit of the percentage of personalities on the call? Not yet. During the fireside. Okay, no problem. I think there is a second question as well on where you are joining us from. And don't hesitate if you can bring it up to speed. Otherwise, we'll get started. Yes. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, or abroad. We have a lot of our participants coming from abroad as well. Okay, I'll let you finish. And that should be it as well. Thanks, Joey, for putting these questions. We're going to start with the first session. I will be putting my moderator hat on the side and bring it my speaker hat for the next 40 minutes. And then I'll pass it on to Celia and Karen. So ready for now. I will be putting on the screen the presentation I prepared for the community today. Okay, and entire screen, share. Okay, and you should see my screen. I'll let Joey confirm that everything is going fine via the channel we have in the back, and I'll get started. Okay, fantastic. So thank you very much. So for the first presentation we have today, we'll talk about we define what is the circular economy. Let's not assume that every one of you understand exactly what it is. And we'll talk about the business models and the opportunities that can be created and how to spot them. And we'll talk also about the fake innovators, the one using buzzwords, but actually are more surfing on a cool buzz rather than actually moving the needle. Without further ado, my background, by the way, I was leading strategy at Singtel, which covers Globe and a lot of telco, and I was head of strategy and innovation at Samsung Electronics. Many of you might be dialing from one of the devices of the company. I built my first company in the Philippines, and the company that I represent works with fully entrepreneurs and people that move the needle on the client side. We're not much consultants. We're independent. Our tone, if you've seen us in our previous conversation, are pretty much we say it as we see it. We might not be politically correct, but at least we are integral in the information we deliver to you. So Without further ado, what's in the box for today? What is the circular economy and why do we talk about it now? Maybe people are thinking at the moment it's COVID, it's crisis. Maybe we should think about circular economies when things are better. So let's explain why now. Circular models, example to follow and not to follow. And while building circular businesses, what to do and not to do. I'm just going to do time check to make sure I'm not over speaking. So let's start with a definition. What you will, and you'll see it's not very complex, what is a circular model, but let's start with most of the businesses that you know today. We take resources, we transform them, we use them, or our clients use them, and we send them to waste, a landfill most of the time, or an incinerator otherwise. This is a tradition most industries have been designed since the beginning of days. And that's what you would call a linear industry. A circular economy looks at the fact that between the taking of the natural resources and the waste, they are a way to minimize the amount of resources you take from Mother Earth and the amount of unuseful waste that you provide back. And those are a lot of circular economies, circular models to generate more value by reusing and optimizing the way industries and value chains are being structured. So that sounds like a lot of arrows, and that's why it's circular. There's a lot of opportunities and business models that simply don't take and simply send to waste. A lot more companies can exist should they be able to work in a different manner. So let's see a little bit more the type of solution providers that you find, the type of players you find in the circular economy. You have the product businesses, the people that will be better and more efficient at transforming natural resources into product. You'll have people that provide solutions that helps optimize the flows of those industries. And you have the facilitators, governments, regulators, as well as support. And even today, we participate in the facilitator box, the people that will educate and help build businesses for circular economy. We'll go into a few examples of companies. When you think about the sharing economy, whether it is Uber, whether it is Airbnb, whether it is bicycles, you have a way to minimize the production because a single bike is better or a single car is better utilized by the community. Less road space, less materials and wastes. You'll have businesses that are here we'll take the Protex businesses that sell protein ingredients to the food industry and then take the food waste back in order to breed larvae, flies, that will in turn produce proteins and ingredients. So you see some businesses that are becoming both the resource provider as well as the waste manager in order to not even simply recycle, but recreate the input of an industry, moving into a circular, reducing it. And you've seen a few other examples in Type C of platforms and I would say digital platform in this case that helps track, monitors the flow of those resources to ensure there is integrity and optimization simply of the flow of energy and resources. So most people will say, JF, that's kind, that's nice, but I didn't come here today to save the planet. Of course, I want to save the planet, but I'm also trying to make ends meet, and it's a very vivid reality during COVID. And the reality here, and especially for developing worlds that don't have much either IP, army, or natural resources, is while the wave of COVID and the recession that has already started, you'll have a second wave of what people call in this graph as a fun joke, climate change. The reality behind is not simply climate change. It's the scarcity of precious natural resources. Everyone knows that the peak of oil reserve has reached in 2006, 2007. So now every year we produce less oil than the year before, and our consumptions keep rising. Fossil fuels is still our main energy, and natural and solar energy and wind are not far from being able to be a viable replacement in the world of today. So you'll have fights for natural resources. You have much more discrete but much more vivid. The laptop you're using to dial today, or the phone, use precious materials that are not recyclable. And you're not consuming less electronics than yesterday. So there will be a fight for natural resources for a lot of goods that are existing today, and that will be putting pressures on the one who can't pay for it, or the one who can't access the natural resources, whether by money or by army. And so when you see COVID, you see the fight and the nationalistic behaviors that will put a pressure on businesses to be finding their own resources and be more not frugal but economical in the way they use scarce resources, scarce energy. And today we will show how some businesses can be built today to address this already scarcity, the frugality required, and build stronger economies starting from the Philippines. This is the focus of our presentation. So that's why we talk about it now, and I hope that you understand a bit more about what circular economy is. So let's look at example and bring it to life. I'm just doing a time check. It's 17, perfect. Example to follow and not to follow. So I'll show a few examples. If you remember the diagram that starts with obviously tech, make, use, I'll go for a few phases and show a few examples about what it looks like and how the creative industry from the Philippines can position itself. I'll show you a few examples of one side or a singular approach, and I'll show you a few examples that takes collaborations, which is the real enabler. Collaboration outside one single company. So here you see backpack, durable bags that are capable of extending the duration of a use phase, and as such, you limit the need for reproducing. That's actually been counterintuitive if we look at the opposite of what have been done across the last 40 years, where we have done our best to reduce the lifespan of any single good in order for consumer to be able to repurchase. You had that in consumer electronics, you had that in car, you had that actually much more vividly and importantly in toothbrush, in tires, in all those little bottles and plastics and bells and whistles that we wanted you to repurchase on a weekly basis instead on a quarterly basis. So these are some of the opportunities there on the use phase. We start seeing business models. So here I'm showing you an example from Singapore. You could do exactly tomorrow the same business model starting in the Philippines, and you'll find investor for you. Rebello is I forgot, I put one L too many. My apology to my friends at Rebello. It's a recycling of consumer electronics. They take the iPhones that the wealthiest of us are buying, and then when the time it is to dispose of them, they buy them out and then they refurbish them and then resell them. This flow extends the life of usually Samsung and Apple devices for much longer time. It's a simple business, to be very honest, and quite profitable. It's something that can be done in the Philippines as well and raise good money. Rebello raised around $2 million last year after just 6 months of operation. Very simple. Just giving you a few points. And if you need some help, just text me. I'll tell you how to do that. Norway, here it is to look at how to build building structures that can be deconstructed and reused for a bit like a Lego block, building buildings and being able to recycle the whole structures of buildings when their time has come. That's a way to limit impact. Here we'll show you an example of Van der Lande, which is one of the leader, if not the leader worldwide, to do the conveyor belt in the world. When you go to the airport, when you used to go to the airport to fly, and you were waiting for your luggage. So the idea there was, instead of producing endless conveyor belts and having more and more of them, they look at how they can remove them entirely. And instead of you going to your luggage, getting your luggage coming to you, and we help them work with Toyota Robotics to build the little robots you see there. They are at Heathrow Airport and at Dallas Airport in the US to reduce the amount of physical goods that are needed to build the conveyor belt and the energy required there. You see Dow that has recycling on the mattresses themselves. So you see a logic of reducing the wastage and reducing the resources needed to provide the same service. You have a few examples on the Take and Make from Sappi, who use alternative on the packaging, similar to a Kinotech on the type of construction blocks and the type of and this is very important for the bricks itself. You can't imagine how much, depending obviously on which country you are, for the Anglo-Saxon world that is very brick oriented, a lot of their houses can reduce by threefold the energy consumption thanks to bricks that are much more isolating. And some bricks can be even constructed via recycled materials instead of using big cement and brick factories that produce a large amount of carbon dioxide and how do you call it? The gas that produce global warming. Okay, we have a few examples just for the fun, but the packaging is important because many of you works in crafting products, and obviously you're going to have to wrap them in certain packaging. So here you a few examples where Dell partnered with a packaging company that provides biodegradable mushroom packaging. You put them outside, and you can eat and start cooking. UPS, carbon offset footprint, so that's how to offset the balance. And you'll see, and many of the large MNCs are moving towards showing they are carbon zero. So they are all counting towards, especially the wealthiest, are looking at how can we demonstrate that we are a zero carbon footprint company by what time. And that means that the way they source their partners, and you are, for many of you on the call today, smaller business, mid-size and small and beautiful, which means that the type of B2B clients, some of you are servicing corporates, will have this type of expectation and will be ready to pay a slight premium for the one who can communicate and can demonstrate that they are aligned with something called the ESG objective. Which is, if I remember properly, it's the United Nations, but I don't want to be mistaken with the World Economic Forum. It might be the World Economic Forum, one of the two major instances in the world that defines the environmental and social goals to be more responsible and more conscious of the externalities of our economies. And so they are all committed to reduce their footprint. And vendors like you could win contracts by providing that type of certification they are expecting. So I'm giving you a few examples. We had I simplified the model here to show how the mud jeans who are recycling cotton fibers, they are rethinking a simple industry. Some of you might be in the fashion industry, and we will talk a little bit later with Celia and Karen on the textile industry, Celia in particular, if I remember well, on how the fashion industry, it's a highly polluting industry, and how some companies are looking at each steps and thinking not simply how do you produce jeans that are, for instance, here that are less, that are more recyclable, but each step of the consumptions and the value chain. So here you see that they offer free repair for your jeans. You can have some lease programs where the same clothes can be shared by different people. You'll have some second-hand product as well, refurbishment. So some businesses are looking much beyond one step and looking at all the business models, because here is not simply being nice for the world. It's making money by selling the same product on different type of business models, billing models. And that creativity can generate new income. And obviously, you, as a side effect, you are, depending on the way you want to look at it, either the side effect is you are being nicer to planet Earth, or as a side effect, by being nicer to planet Earth, you're making good money. So here we explain that how the traditional fashion industry is actually highly impactful, and just using organic and recycled materials, it's a bit of blah blah bullshit. Because if you just do that, you will not be making much of a dent in the ecosystem, and that's when you start being perceived as hypocritical and lip service. And we all know a few companies that do that. Here you see companies that like H&M that is trying to actually go much beyond simply the recycling. So they start bit by bit partnering with other companies. So it's not about doing it all yourself. And that's when smaller players at a local level make sometimes more sense than global partner. So even if H&M has a fantastic partnership in the US, it means that in the Philippines, they might be completely naked and look for a clothing company. The pun was not intended, but looking for a partner. So I'm making jokes. I don't know if anyone is laughing, and it's a bit awkward, but it's okay. I'm used to that. H&M. So a few other examples. So here, probably one of the usual culprit, and we all are guilty, so we'll all go to hell. But in the meantime, we'll talk about the bottle industry and how the plastic bottle is one of the highest polluter, and we are responsible for it. So each players that are part of the value chains are scratching their head because they are economical gain to crack this. So here obviously you're familiar, and how the red here shows that at every single step of a circular economy, the one that produce bottle, use bottle, dispose of bottles are wrong on every single aspect. We'll show a company, Danone, not because it's French. I didn't create the deck fully. It was done by my Belgian friends. Are looking at removing bit by bit the things that are guilty in the bottle. So first, they are partnering to remove the bottle layer. There is the amount of plastic that goes into the cap. There is, of course, the recycling process and how biodegradable is the plastic itself and reusable it is. So we start seeing that at every single industry, and the plastic bottle industry is one, each steps is being tackled, but there is a lot of gaps and at each step there is a business model possible and a possible partner. So we'll see a bit later in the presentation, when you look at any industry, you can see if the industry is still linear, which means take, make, use, waste, and who is doing the return, who is doing the recycle, who is doing the reuse, who is doing the repair. And you realize that for most industries, they have barely touched it. So there is at least 4 business models per category, per industry, per country that needs to be provided as a service by a new player. And that could be you. Okay, so building circular businesses, I'll do a time check on my phone, 29, I'm going to prepare, so I've got just 11 minutes. I think we should be good. So building circular businesses, what not to do. So let's start with what not to do and what to do, of course. It's not only that. So let's look at the common pitfalls of circular economy innovation. The first one is the vanity metrics. So here, I show an example. How many companies have said we have used 5% more recycled materials? If we look at all the investor in financial reports of every company worldwide across the last 20 years, you will have environmental sections, and you will have things like, we have recycled 5% of our materials. We have reduced the energy consumptions per whatever it is, per shampoo bottle, per bag by 3.2%. We have a more social environment protection by making children work 1 hour less per bag. But the reality, as they all grow 10% or 20% a year, they actually are damaging more than actually they are saving anything. So the vanity metrics that are not really aligned with an actual impact, or that are disguising an inconvenient truth, is something that that is part of a pitfall. The less harmful mindset, it's not bad to be less harmful, but that's not good enough when you just think about how do I become less of an evil person versus how can I actually solve the fundamental issues in a consumerist linear value chain. Another pitfall, I'm not saying that, and those pitfalls are not meaning like it's terrible. It's just like it's falling so short of what it should be. and how much money can be made. If we even selfishness is welcome here. It's just a smart selfishness instead of really a short-termist selfishness. The single player innovation is, you'll see that most circular innovation does not rely on you thinking inside your garage and then basically creating a new linear industry. It requires partnering with an existing players or existing players, plural, of an industry, and find a way to co-share. Sounds bizarre as well. To share value, economies, and responsibilities, as well as the publicity that goes around it. And then there is just simply another pitfall, which is people either don't care because that's not part of their culture, or they don't know simply that they have been a little bit politically anchored towards circular economy means saving the planet. Saving the planet means making less money, means I don't want to talk about it, so let's ignore what it is. Well, actually, no, it's not actually making less money. It is just making more sustainable money and potentially launching new businesses that overall make you grow as a company. Bottleneck, I'm showing you a few bottlenecks that are to be fought. The convenience, it's easy to follow the one-time use, and we don't pay for the externalities. That's our children that pays, and our grandchildren's, and the endangered species that pay for our mistakes. We don't trust, but the convenience is becoming more and more attacked now. So that's it's going into the right direction. Trust issues. There is a lot of lack of credibility of people communicating on circular economies and on sustainability in general. You had that in the organic food. Organic can be anything you like. The reality is every country and every players have a very loose definition and tracking about what is organic. You can have chicken that are freely ranging in a field that is just beside an incineration plant. It's not really great as a food, but at least they're running. So that's there's a lot of abuse and lack of trust and accountability there. So when you see a problem, what I see is a business opportunity. Value perception, many clients are not willing to pay extra just because it's circular, and that's important. That's important to know that the reality is consumers are not willing to pay more in general for a sustainable product. And whether we can bitch about it, the reality is it is what it is. The water is wet, the sun is hot. And if consumers don't want to pay more for sustainable product, we have to find business models that don't increase the cost for the end consumer. That's it. That's just a constraint that we have to live with. Friction for change. Obviously, switching to new business model, as any innovation, and you've seen it for some of you working in large corporates, it's hard to change. To change a business model, and that's, you will say, I'll use again, that's a threat, you would say. But the reality is, because large corporates are a little bit harder to change, they want to get something done. They just can't change entirely their business model. That creates an opportunity for you to provide that with services to them, because they cannot host it within their P&L structure. The profitability, as we mentioned, it has to be viable, and you need the framework. And the last one is the framework and the blueprint, and that's what we're doing today as well, starting showing you what is circular economies, how to spot business models and steps within an economy to move it from linear to circular, and see what type of if you remember the diagram that has a lot of arrows, which business model do you want to combine and partner with a large MNCs in order to bring it to life? So how to unlock circular business opportunities? What I already started alluding to is circular economies. It's all about the value chain and the ecosystem. It's extremely hard to build and it's leaving money on the table to build a circular economy on your own. You're much more valuable when you partner with people that are stuck into their linear value chain and needs to break it, but find that because the CFO has only one way of looking at things, they need to partner out in order to bring the circular economies to life. This is where you're coming. So there are different different angles to look at innovation or ecosystem and circular economy opportunities. One is you look at the value chain, as I mentioned in a product, the jean industry. You look at recycle and oh, thank you for the note. 19 minutes left. Oh, we have actually, we're good. Don't worry, 7 minutes, we're good. Follow one value chain of a product. You spot where are the reuse, recycle, share, and the remake opportunities that you have there, and then you own that, and you partner with the leader, the incumbent, that is stuck into the linear industry. Otherwise, you can look, and for companies that are a little bit more mature, you can look at combining different products, different industries together. You will have at certain industries waste are the input of others. Let me give an example on the food, the agriculture. You have that for agriculture. The first example that comes to mind to me is how you use wasted waters as a fertilizer, and that's good for the food industry as well, and for the farming industry. You have certain outputs into the recycling of precious materials from smartphones that can go back to the consumer electronic industry. It can supply to other industry as well. You have a copper from wires, and when a telecom industry is switching from copper to fiber optics, that copper can be reused into completely different industries. So there are business model on how do you reduce the cost of the migration of a telco infrastructure and partner in an ecosystem that is incentivized to do the job for you. So 3 principles to build circular business model and ecosystem is you need to source from existing. So the best way to build them is you need to source your raw materials from existing businesses rather than looking back at Mother Earth. Another aspect is you look at existing value chains and product, and you look at how you can add on servicing, so renting, sharing, co-owning, recycling. The recycling, that's the last part, to add value to an existing value chain. And the last one is how do you create valuable input for businesses beyond the customer. So it's all the ecosystem of tracking, data, accounting for the recycle, measuring the impact, enabling with a regulation and that's why, because we have a few people from the regulatory industry or sector here on the call. So again, different ways of looking at it. You can look at your suppliers, you can look at your clients, you can look at the suppliers of your suppliers, you can look at the clients of your clients, and then the aftermarket of the products of your clients. So they are, you can look upstream and downstream. So that's what I explained here. The closer to your company, the easier it is, but the less circular you become, and the easier it is for your competitor to do the same. So that's another framework for you to think about where is the innovation and what role can I play, and how can I integrate vertically to find and unlock those opportunities. Here I was mentioning as well that you link the output of one industry to the input of yours, which is another example of making link between organization. So here I'm showing you example and tactics on when you look at an industry, what is your eye looking for? Because we have so many industries on the call today. Some of you may be in furniture, some of you may be in clothing, some of you may be in engineering, some of you may be in construction, some of you may be in other industries. So it would be hard to cover every single industry on the call. But the idea is you look at your industry, you look at your suppliers, you look at what are their waste, and how their waste can be used by you or can be used by someone else. So every industry, you look at their waste and you look at how that can become plugged into the input of someone else. So as it is all about P-nice and P-noise for today, spotting opportunity, you look for another last, let's say, pointers. You look for scarcity. You look at resources that are contained in products, outputs, that it will become scarce and are not produced within the Philippines. So for instance, in consumer electronics, a lot of materials are not produced in the Philippines, they're produced in China. So that means that a lot of products that you are going to the minefield, landfill today, the one that you want to start looking at are the ones that have producing components that cannot be mined in the Philippines. And indeed, when the protectionism keep increasing, it's not going to go in the other direction. You have access to this higher and higher price and harder and harder reachable resources. You look for demands. So you look for very large companies, because it's circular. You'll need to go to larger corporates and partner with them. You look for companies with either tight margins, meaning they need to find ways to save and to recycle and to reuse and to find new ways of making revenue. And you look at big brands that have a premium, and they can afford to be able to usually have those initiative and those ambition to reduce their footprint. For San Miguel, which is, we'll give you an example in Europe, they put $1 value on each bottle in order to incentivize the homeless to be able to bring back the bottles to the recycling, rather than wait for the government to pay for a company to collect and find the bottles left somewhere behind a wall. So there are ways for these companies to be, and they're actively looking for these models, but they need to partner with people that are a little bit more frugal. If you remember, for some of you who attended our last sessions on the low-touch economy and innovating in the new normal, emphasize the part that whatever business model, business ideas you're coming up with, before you spend $1, print it. Use design thinking to validate that the business model that you're coming up with has traction, and refine it. So you can go back to the previous presentation or go on boardofinnovation.com and you look at all the materials. They're all free of charge on the methodologies for you to refine the business model, test with customers and clients whether that business model and that service and that ecosystem that you're bringing to life is worth $1 for them. And then when you got sufficient traction, then only then you start actually building your infrastructure for it. And last but not least, we're talking about impact business here. There is a lot of venture capital, a lot of government and international funding for companies that are innovating in that space. And so why not getting invested by people that will make you rich, rather than try to do everything on your own and fund it with our tiny little resources. And just a few words of warning. As I mentioned, circular economies requires you to work within an ecosystem, and the best is to obviously to work with incumbents. Be careful. Many of you may know, but they are big elephants. They're very powerful. They're commendable, the work they have done to build their companies, but they're also a bit clumsy and they are slow. And the corporate salarymen don't work at the same pace as you entrepreneurs work. They will still have a job in 3 to 4 months while you might not have a company. So that level of stress and pressure means that don't be naive about the time horizon it takes to work with a corporate. That's just a few words of heads up. So it is 10:45. I think that Joey and Ray will be very happy that I finish exactly on the dot for the first presentation, and we will move now to the second part of our session today. So thanks again, everybody. And let me see. Yes, this is the beginning. A few words. You don't have to run in circle to make the world go round. Finishing up, going back here, stop the sharing, up, and you can see me again. Cool. So if I look at my notes, I will obviously thank you, everybody. I will remind you that if you have any questions, please put them down, and we can revisit them when we go towards the panel. There's a little... Fantastic. This is super good tech. Thanks, Joey. So up next, our speaker is the director for the Philippine Textile Research Institute. She has decades of extensive experience in the field of apparel and textile, having worked with companies such as Wire and McLean, RH Macy's, Liz Claiborne International, Idego Fashions. She currently leads Tela Filipinas, where she championed the promotion of the local textile industry. Please join me in welcoming Celia Elumba to the call today. Hello, Celia. Can you hear?
Yeah, thank you very much. Hi, good morning, and good morning to everyone. That was a fantastic presentation. I'm very happy that you already set the tone. You've already given the definitions of the terms that we're going to be talking about, and very thrilled to have seen the examples that you had given. Well, first of all, guys, I'm really very happy for the invitation to speak in this 2020 Digital Design Conference and Design Futures. I'm particularly happy to share with you the inclusive strategy behind the regional textile production and innovation approach we would suggest as a way forward to the better normal. And I'm, of course, particularly referring to textiles and textile developments. We propose that this be an essential approach to innovating not just a traditional textile industry in Iloilo, where we have set up the first regional yarn production innovation facility, but in the Philippines in general, and more importantly, towards a reboot of the systems we presently employ. So first, if I may have the next slide, please. Just very short slide of what we do at the Philippine Textile Research Institute. I will not say much about this. I will invite you instead to visit us in our website. But it's just to say that we are a research and development institute under the Department of Science and Technology, which focuses on anything that is textile, of everything, whatever application that may be, from wearables to home furnishings to industrial to technical or medical textiles. And so we are ISO certified for the management system and accredited ISO as well for the laboratories, both chemical and physical. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share with you this slide on what we call as closing the loop on fashion as we know it, or as we have been guided in the Philippine Textile Research Institute. This is a framework that we go by or have been going by for the last 3 or 4 years. And essentially, it's looking at the value transformation of the supply chain from your agricultural products, your fiber, to your yarn, to fabric, to apparel. And I'm happy that you mentioned some examples already, JF, as you go down to your retail side. And you may be familiar with the examples that are being presented here. I like Patagonia a lot, the North American brand, because of the way that they look at product and the reusability of the product. They will even show you your bubble jacket. Let's suppose that a stitch breaks off. They will even show you how to fix it with a video, or they can direct you to where you can have it fixed. The next is your consumer, that's us. And we hope that we still know how to darn a sock or put on a button or fix the hem. And moving on to your post-consumer recycling system, well, you already mentioned H&M, and that it's fantastic that you can bring back a bag of clothes. And the beauty of it is it does not have to be their brand. And then they'll sort it out. Is it for recycling? Can you repair it? Or can you send it to a post-consumer recycling facility to break it down? And this is where the rewear idea for us comes in. How you can break down the very things that we are wearing. This is now your feedstock. Of course, it's a very simplified statement. There's more to it than meets the eye. And from that particular product, you can then break it down to its basic polymer, make a new fiber, a new yarn, a new fabric out of it until it becomes a new apparel. And the cyclability of it is in that second to third layers. So I just wanted to indicate that in our next slide, you will see that in these aspects of your value chain transformation of the supply chain, on our next slide, you will see that the Institute has actually put in a number of different technologies or R&D thrusts. This is not the most complete because I have not updated this, but as we speak, there are many more that have been coming to the fore. But if I may highlight, if you can click on the slide, you have Tela Pilipinas. Tela Pilipinas and the Textile Product Development Centers are the two areas that we are putting focus on as we look at the idea of looking at everything from end to end, from the very beginning to the very end of the product. So we will not spend that much time. This is, of course, available in our website. Next slide, please. So for some context and perspective. So I come with a question. Let's start with this slide. What do you think these products have in common, aside from the fact that they look stylish and are very well made? And yes, there is a storyboard to this. Well, there are at least 3 things. First, they are done by companies with a focus on sustainability. Hence, these products are made with the use of natural materials, and natural materials are coming from the Philippines. So the next slide will show us, you may already be familiar with these brands. The slide on the left, or the pictures or the graphics on the left, will show you this brand is a brand called Pinatex by a UK-based company using pineapple leaves from a plantation kind of pineapple, not the kind of pineapple that is used in Calibo Aklan, but the pineapples that are of Formosa, Hawaiian, or Queen varieties. The first source was from a multi-purpose cooperative in Camarines Norte. Because of the demand, they have now grown to find supply from notable sources like Bukidnon, for example. And the raw material is processed into a non-woven substrate, which is then shipped to either Italy or Spain, from where it is finished to become leather-like in properties and application. The business model is that material is product, material as product. They cater to many brands wishing to inject a sustainability angle to their businesses. This include H&M, Boss Hugo Boss, and Paul Smith. The second is by the company called Question, the one on the right, based in Zurich, Switzerland. The material, while it is called Bananetex, is really abaca from Catanduanes, and which is converted into yarns in a spinning facility in Taiwan and woven into cloth also in a second facility in Taiwan. Their business model, unlike the first one, is to introduce a sustainable material into their range of product offerings, which include work and leisure bags. Bananetex is biodegradable. Pinatex is working towards that. So the next slide will show you a map of the province of Iloilo in the Philippines, Western Visayas part. The next slide, please. Irony cannot be lost on us. There are at least a number of ironies here. First of all, in the pursuit of sustainability, the supply chain traversed over 12,000 kilometers in air travel, and I'm speaking of one-way air travel, not to mention the times that you have to come in and out for product development and material testing. In this map of Iloilo, which by the way was noted about 100 years ago as the textile center of the Philippines, you will find that there are already material sources. And there are a lot of handloom weaving communities. Of course, I'm not espousing that we stick to handloom weaving. We need scale. As I mentioned to someone, you want to dress 105 million Filipinos, and we cannot do that simply by working with traditional handlooms. But certainly there is a value to that traditional textile development in the regions. So you find that we have this. In a recent note, we established a regional scale facility so that the very materials that are growing in the very location can be transformed into a higher value product. So if I may have the next slide, please. So we're going after circular by design, or circularity by design. If we go back to the other slide, and really we're talking about centralized, from going into a centralized to a regionalized, or breaking it apart and going into a decentralized mode, from working from a vertical perspective to a localized perspective. You've heard of the term vertical integration, which means that everything you need to finish a product are all available within the one factory setting. Well, this is expanding it out and bringing it to the local level. Everything you need is available in that very location within a 150 kilometer radius. The number is arbitrary. It depends on the logistics available to us. And it is going from natural systems to natural ecosystems. So in the next slide, you will show a screenshot from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, our go-to for toolkits, resource materials for circular conversations. And in particular, we're talking about the cradle-to-cradle approach, which leads us to three basic principles of the circular economy: the regeneration of natural systems. And here is where we will make use of what is available to us in a more restorative manner, not just simply taking it for all that it's worth, but finding a way how to regenerate and how to keep them in sustainable availability. We keep products and materials in use, and this is where the biological cycle and the technological cycle of products and processes come into the picture. Is it something that can go back to the soil to regenerate the soil, or is it something that goes back into the system? So if you look at the lyocell process of making regenerated cellulose, it is a closed loop system that reuses the very chemicals and materials with very little that is thrown out that goes into the environment. So that's a closed loop system. So we're looking at those models or modes. And then, of course, you design out waste and pollution. You start by the design of it. So you pardon my little dog in the background. So next slide, please. So we are, of course, looking at how to accelerate regional tech-based development through STI, or Science, Technology, and Innovation. And the Institute has been working on natural textile fibers for many decades now, and we concentrate on six of them, from with abaca, banana, pineapple. Bandala is perhaps a new one that you will encounter. This is now a breed between abaca and banana, a wild banana, which was done naturally, not in the GMO process, but in a very natural selection process. And we are looking at bamboo and Philippine silk, both of which have materials that are very good sequesters of carbon from the environment. And at the end of that, we have upcycling or cycling in the midstream as well as in the downstream. So the next slide, please. This is all put to the head under what we consider or call a localized integration approach, or the creation of ecosystems for us. And this is under the banner of TELA Pilipinas. TELA is an acronym. Of course, there is a technical definition. Etymology of this is textere, or it's very textile related. In the Filipino vernacular, it is tela is fabric, textile. But for us at the Institute, this is really textiles empowering lives anew. It's a throwback to when there was not a lot of large-scale production, but which in the case of England became the linchpin for industrialization. For us, we do not want to emulate or copy the pollution that, of course, ensued from both air and water, as well as the or not fantastic labor practices at the time. We do not want to go there. We want to have the best practices for now. But the goal of Tela Pilipinas is to integrate the local sources. If you have fiber on the ground, colorants on the ground, you can then convert that on the ground into a spun material that the weavers from that community can then transform, the dyers can then color, and the social entrepreneurs or the national government offices can then produce as their own means of uniforms or wear for daily life. So the next slide will show us a breakdown of this value transformation process from the natural textile fibers to pretreated fiber to a spun yarn that then converts into a dyed, a woven, or knit material. And from the pretreated fiber, you can also then go into non-wovens, which really is the material for our medical textiles as well as industrial textiles. Next slide, please. The goal being local value addition. So this is a graph of a soil to near skin. So in the prior slide that I showed you, this is up to the process of the spun yarn. So it's near skin, not yet quite converted. But the goal always is to have this local value addition. Next slide, please. We'll show you the value addition. This is bamboo, which is on the main frame. And on the side, you will see the abaca, the banana and pineapple leaf value transformation, how it grows in that. And we are really just always looking to see this check mark, to see how it is checked for that value transformation. Next slide, please. So what are we after? We have mapped where our resources are. We wanted to find out how we can integrate these dots. And on the left, you're seeing a map where we think we could put up natural textile fiber of abaca, banana, pineapple leaf, which share the same methodology for extraction and pretreatment. And on the right side, the bamboo innovation, bamboo textile fiber innovation hubs, which has its own particular mechanism or protocol. And on the next slide, you will see where we're very keen to now have, oh, I apologize. This slide now shows you an actual, the next slide will show you an actual application of what happens in abaca setting, an abaca fiber production and treatment hub that we are hoping will be set up in Surigao also very soon. This does not just look at the livelihood opportunities. It goes back into the peace and order scenario, as this is working with insurgents in the area and how to mainstream them into society. And in this, you will find that there is already a collaboration from various organizations and agencies, as you will see in the other forthcoming slides. The next slide will share with you the Philippine Silk Road through S&T program. And this is looking at the Cordillera as the seat in the Luzon Island Group. We have Negros Occidental in the Visayas Island Group and our own technology center in Misamis Oriental in the Mindanao Group as part of this Silk Road development. And again, this is a component of the National Greening Program that goes back to mulberry as a good sequester of carbon from the environment. And so there are many projects that are under this. But again, this provides us a mechanism, an opportunity for people in the regions to really rally around product, as what we would call our town, our product, over one town, one product, our town, our product, and produce materials and product, and with using the resources that are available to them, with also the natural skills and talents of the community available to them. The next slide, please. In this other map, you will see the bamboo Textile Fiber Innovation Hub with prior. And here you will see on the left side the Regional Yarn Production and Innovation Center. The first one was already set up in Miagao in Iloilo. And the idea here is on the right side, when you integrate all of these various textile fiber sources and the ability to now spin them in the regional yarn production and innovation centers, it's a fantastic opportunity to now have all of our guys come on board to produce material from the ground and product that they themselves can use or send out as intertrade or as export products from the Philippines. Next slide, please. So what does this mean? I'm going back to the Regional Yarn Production Innovation Center that was set up in Miagao. The carbon footprint reduction is going to be very significant, from 550 to 52 as a carbon footprint. For every gram of cotton fiber you replace, because we're working with 70% cotton, 30% pineapple leaf, or 30% abaca, or 30% or 25% bamboo, you reduce the water use by 1%. Next slide, please. This is the right pick, just to show you that it really already actually happened. And we're looking forward to the innovation hubs and the textile fibers come to fore. We're just, of course, looking for funding for those. The next slide, please. Pictures of the slivers and the coned yarns, as well as finished materials that were woven by the community as well in Miagao or the nearby the environs in the Iloilo community. Next slide, please. And of course, we have also one of our flagship programs, Natural Dyes. And we have done similarly, we have already situated a number of hubs in different parts of the country. And the goal, again, is that they become integrated and they become the users of each other, so that the output of one becomes the input of another, the input of another, and the input of another. Next slide, please. We therefore went into a partnership with another organization, Natural Crafts Connection in Batangas. The goal here now is to scale up the powderization of dyes. As you may know, natural crude extracts have a very short shelf life. You have to use it very quickly within a 5 to 7 day period. By powderizing it, you increase that by 1 year. You also have the ability to use materials that are no longer in season, so that you can always have that color in constant supply. So part of the study was mapping the availability of different sources and how the color is different, because definitely these are place-based. It's a function of the water and the quality of the soil. And so the color is actually different from place to place, even if the source is the same. Next slide, please. So when you go back to closing the loop on fashion as a framework, it really just sets that whole idea that we have materials that we can use. And these materials, I mean, going back to what JF had said earlier, no longer need to be planted because they are already planted. And two of them are actually agricultural waste or byproduct. Banana leaf, the banana cum, the trunk of the banana, as well as the pineapple leaves, which are just simply left to rot, and which really also affects the acidity of the soil if they are not addressed or removed quickly from that setting. Next slide, please. So in this conversion of the yarns, what we want, you see the processes here that are involved. These are already value addition or value adding to the very community where we have the ripe picks. But at the end of this, at the shelf life of that blended yarn, because it is now a biodegradable material, it is also possible for us to bring it back to the degumming process and go back to, again, the regeneration from yarn to fabric to apparel. Next slide, please. I show this because if you're familiar with weaving, these are the processes. This is, again, way of looking at the value addition. But what I wanted to highlight is we're not as averse or very averse to synthetics or polyester in particular. I think you will find that a lot of our weavers have been really using polyester. It's very simple. It's very accessible. It is very cheap. So the goal here, though, is that the tediousness of the process is decreased by the amount or the quality of the product, the raw material that you put in with it. So even though the processes remain very difficult, if the cost of the material or the quality of the material is low, the value of the end product dives. And this has been experienced by our weavers in Miagao in particular, when they went to a selling exhibition and the buyers found out that they were using polyester for their weaves. They sold zero in a 3-year setting for an international selling exhibition. So here what we're trying to say is, if I can keep the yarn intimately either natural or intimately synthetic, and I weave them together, there is a way that we can separate them and still maintain the integrity of those yarns in the end. So In our system, we have already, in the past, we were combining a synthetic with the natural in one yarn. We're no longer doing that as of 2 years ago, except for study purposes to compare the results. Next slide, please. So rewear now is into the bigger picture of looking at your apparels. And this was really inspired by a recent activity that we had, the volcanic eruption in the Taal area. And because of the Filipino spirit of compassion and the bayanihan, one town found a gym full of donated clothes they didn't know what to do with. What do you do with them? And so here is where we would have in our first line of defense, JF mentioned as well, we will have companies like Phoenix and companies like Wear Forward, who will first find a way to convert the product into something else of same usefulness as a different product. But eventually, we want to be able to tear that down and bring it back into a new yarn, a new fiber, a new yarn, and a new fabric, as mentioned in our framework. So this is a project that we have already proposed. We are, again, keeping our fingers crossed that this gets funded. Next slide, please. So I'd like to give you a community-based example in our Philippine setting, in our present conditions of the pandemic. Imagine 842 million face masks required for the Philippines in 1 year alone based on a 10-week demand projection for a 2.5 period following WHO essential supply forecasting tools. This means globally, the next slide will show us that this translates to 129 billion face masks every month. What do you do with this accumulation of synthetic, single-use heap of product that will stay there, perhaps biohazardous, and perhaps that will be there for 20, 30, 40 years? Next slide, please. So we came up with a project called Rewear, Face Masks Made Smart. It's made smart because it makes use of fabrics available in the country. It is protective with a PTRI SmartX water repellency finish. It is breathable. The fit is good. The reusability, you can wear one rewear mask 50 times. So the project called for the production of 500,000 rewear face masks. That is equivalent to 25 million that will be taken out of the system. And I'm very happy to note that we have Ms. Ana Lagon of Bio here. Ana was, and her husband, her family was very responsive to the call that was made. We wanted to find a mechanism, and Ana goes back, of course, with the Taal volcanic eruption, but we wanted to find a way that we can make this happen on the ground locally with materials that we have available to us, technology already available to us. Next slide, please. It is also smart because it uses a design of two separate pieces that you can put together, because one can be washed differently from the other to maintain that 50 times reusability. So it is comprised of, even as it is 3 to 4 layers, it is very breathable. In fact, it adheres to the WHO standards or recommendations for a community face mask. The outer piece protects the wearer, the inner piece protects others from the wearer if the wearer happens to be the one infected. So in the next slide, this is Rewear as we have it. And the different functionalities or the properties that has been imbued with and in the packaging that it comes in. And you will see that this is actually a slew of partnership as in everything else that we have done. It is a partnership, a collaboration, which if it was important before, it is even more important today. We cannot not do this without the collaboration of partners who are of the same ilk or of the same thinking as everybody else is for a particular goal or aspiration. The next slide, please. So I invite you to please connect with us. Take a look at what we have on the website. There are a lot of resources. There is a face mask resource kit that you will find there, which will tell you everything you need to know. And it will give you the minimum recommended standards as well as recommended equipment or material that should be done for that purpose, and the testing services of the PTRI. So thank you very much. And unlike JF, I was not looking at my time, and I hope that that's been done. All right. Thank you, JF. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Celia. It was a fantastic presentation, very verticalized, and you know your industry very well, and very localized as well to bring it to life to the community. I think that you very humbly tackle probably 15 or 20 business opportunities, and I like the way you brought to life Remask. I have many questions for you as well, but I'll put them on hold for the panel session. I would like to thank you, and then first introduce Karen. We're good on time. It was worth not interrupting you and letting you finish. And we'll bring you back in after Karen's presentation. So we're just getting started. We will introduce our next speaker, who has years in design and community experience under her belt. For more than 25 years, Karen has worked with artisan enterprise around the world to help them expand their market. She's currently the president and co-founder of Buy-in Consulting and leads program to equip artisan businesses with the knowledge and contact to increase sales. That's good. She has served at the board of Aid to Artisan and I Fund, co-funded a successful wholesale lifestyle company, worked with economic development initiative over 70 countries, just that, and regularly collaborates with trade shows, major retailers, and ethical sourcing program in the US market. Her passion is the handmade sector and sharing her knowledge and connection with artisan entrepreneurs worldwide. So please help me welcome Karen Gibbs to the floor now. Hi, Karen.
Hello, JF. Thank you so much for that introduction. I have to say, after listening to your presentation and to Celia's, these are challenging times that are overwhelming and downright depressing on a regular basis. And both of your presentations were just inspiring. It just reminds us that we do have an opportunity to make action to reverse some of the horrible things that have happened to our planet and that we've been responsible for. So it was really just inspiring. So thank you so much. And I'm so glad to join you all this morning for you, this evening for me. I'm calling in from the US. So if I yawn a little bit, you'll have to pardon me. So anyways, I am so happy to speak to you. I think my specialty is very much the handmade world, but I think the handmade world has such an important role in our marketplace today, and at the root of it is really all about creativity and innovation, right? Artisans and people involved in the handmade sector are constantly coming up with new designs. So I'm very excited to talk to you about this idea of circular design and the role of design in the US market today. So you can go to the next slide. I just thought I'd start off with, first, let's start with my favorite quote right now, which is the best way to predict your future is to create it. And in the words of Abraham Lincoln. And I really believe that it is so important right now for every entrepreneur and designer out there to just create things. We're living in an environment right now that's very forgiving in terms of trying new things, because everybody has to try new things in order to survive the impact of COVID and the economic recession and climate change. Everybody has to try new things, right? We have to adapt. We have to find new ways to communicate and to sell and new products to make. So I think the people who are going to suffer at this time are the ones who are not trying new things. So just really encouraging all of you creatives, designers, design thinkers who are with us today, that you are truly a key to our future opportunity and success. So next slide. I just thought I'd set a context a little bit about talking, about the US market. The last 6 months have been crazy here. We took this tremendous V dip in the marketplace, where we were, retail sales were cruising along at a rapid pace. And in April, they just dipped by over 15%. And in the month of May, started climbing back up. And to July, we actually got back to pre-pandemic levels of retail sales. And that's really significant because 2/3 of the US economy is comprised of consumption, of retail sales, of us buying things. So we are we're 66.66% a retail economy. So we watch these retail sales to really talk about the overall health of our economy. So they were very significant from that point of view. Also from the point of view that we really felt how our consumption can change the world. And so that was impressive. So as they've come back up to pre-pandemic levels, however, we see two significant changes. And the first is How consumers are shopping has changed, and I think will change going forward. And also what they buy has changed. Next slide. So how they have changed is they are shopping more and more online, spending more time online, right? We're on our phones more, we're researching more, we're purchasing things online more, and we're shopping less at some of these legacy retail stores. So we have this wave of bankruptcies happening in the US. Some of these names, some of these anchor stores and shopping malls, right, are declaring bankruptcy, are shutting down a good portion of their stores, are shutting down entirely in some cases, right? So we have this huge shift going on. And in that shift, there's this opportunity that consumers have to research their products and research the impact of their products, research the story behind their products more. So consumers are engaging with the origin, the provenance, the authenticity, the manufacturing, right? The design, the whole story of the product more. So the brands that are telling that story well, the brands that have a product that's making a difference in the world, the brands that have circular products and are thinking about circular designs are the ones that are getting more and more attention. So it's an exciting time for those innovative brands. Next slide. We also see that people are buying more groceries. So they're spending more time thinking about food, thinking about where their food comes from, thinking about what they're eating, right? They're eating out at restaurants less, they're cooking more at home, they're exercising more. Exercise puts them outdoors more, makes them think more about that outdoors, about how climate change is impacting the outdoors, about the quality of the air they're breathing, right? So it's building this whole level of awareness. People are gardening more. They're spending more time in their gardens, planting gardens for food, planting gardens in order for just comfort. They're working from home. They're making additions to their houses. They're renovating houses to adapt to this new lifestyle of working from home, having their kids being educated at home, right? The whole family being at home more, right? So what we see is they're buying more building supplies. Building supplies are going out of stock. So people are starting to think about where do those building supplies come from? How can they repurpose supplies, right? So there's this big movement around reusing materials. We see lots of kits and crafts at home. How are things made? We see much less purchasing of apparel and much less purchasing of services. Next slide. So there's a lot of discussion in this kind of COVID state, kind of settling into a COVID reality, right? About what is the silver lining. Lee Edelcourt has a brilliant presentation where she talks about how she believes that COVID is forever going to change how we consume, and we're going to have more connection to the planet and how our purchases are impacting the planet and where our products come from, that we're going to consume less and we're going to consume better. And in that, there's an opportunity for more innovative, creative, handmade, and sustainable brands. Right before COVID, right, the whole fashion industry in the US and globally was sort of having this giant wake up to the impact of climate change on the impact that apparel makes on the climate and on the planet. We think that this is just accelerating that interest, in part because those consumers are spending more time researching their purchases, more time educating themselves about these issues, because they're spending more time at home and more time online. Next slide. We also see a lot of talk, and this is from the highest level of investment companies, private equity firms, leading business schools in the US are talking about how important purpose is to the stability of your company and to moving it forward in this time. Right? There's this notion that US businesses can no longer just be about making money. US businesses have to have a clear purpose that is above and beyond profit and that resonates very authentically with their product and with their company culture, right? They can't just make it up. Like I think JF was talking about this sort of, just kind of get on the bandwagon of some of these trends, right? The purpose of a company has to be very authentically related to the culture of that company and to the product that it is offering to its customers. And that refreshing your purpose, restating your purpose, recommunicating it as you demonstrate how you're reacting and how you're acting during this time, making sure that that's a demonstration of your purpose and values. So again, this is a time where this is just so imperative to do. If we look at some of those companies in the US whose businesses are declining and who are declaring bankruptcy, we see that many of them, while their company may have had a very clear purpose, they did not communicate it well to their customer. So we believe that that's also part of their decline, is just this lack of very clear purpose to their company. So these are all these trends, right, that are all rising, basically support future demand and future increased demand for products that are circular, right? I think that that's not a language it's not a vocabulary that we see used to market products to consumers very much. I think it's picking up, but it's definitely, it fits if you look at the trends and what's happening in the marketplace, right? And how the market has just shifted as a result of COVID. We see that there's lots of opportunities there for circular products. So the next couple of slides, and we can go to the next one, I was trying to think about how could I capture this kind of growing interest in circular products. How could I capture what's happening sort of right now in the US market to share with you? So I went through over a 2-day period. I looked at some of my emails, and I looked at on my social media feed, and I looked on my LinkedIn feed, and sure enough, right, all of this kind of popped up. I don't think just because some computer was listening to me, but I think it's really because it's very much present. So I thought I'd share some examples that I have recently launched products and recently launched initiatives that speak to this demand and growing interest for circular and sustainable products. So the first is a post that I read from a friend of mine and colleague, Jennifer Gutman, who's the VP of Sustainability at Williams-Sonoma. Williams-Sonoma is one of the largest retailers in the United States. And they just announced a partnership of one of their brands, Pottery Barn, has just launched a partnership with the Renewal Workshop. So the Renewal Workshop is helping Pottery Barn do two things. One is to analyze their supply chain to find ways to create more circular products. And then also are taking some of their excess stock and actually repurposing it into new products. So they're both kind of helping them with the stock that otherwise would be thrown away and to repurpose them into new products, as well as helping them look forward into their supply chain. So this is definitely a needle changing kind of partnership in the US market that will serve to have a big impact, as well as engage more customers in this vocabulary and educate them on the topics. Next slide. So the Good Trade is just a really kind of fun and inspiring weekly newsletter. They have a podcast, I think, that goes to it that just highlights brands that are all around healthy, sustainable, ethical, responsible lifestyles and shopping and consumption. And last Friday, I got an email from them, and the subject line was "Zero Waste Shops for Eco-Friendly Swaps." And I clicked on it, and sure enough, there was a list of 9 companies who I've all listed out here. 9 companies that are all offering zero waste products or products to encourage zero waste transitions for different lifestyles. So these are some of the products shown, but highlighting very small retailers, right? Small emerging brands. So, but still very much aligned with this same idea. Next slide. And then I popped onto my Instagram feed, and here was an Instagram post from B Corporation, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. They're now an international organization where they certify companies to have a triple bottom line. And one of their key initiatives for this year, and I'm sure for the near future, is this whole concept of regenerative agriculture and regenerative products. So they have very much adopted this goal of circular design, as well as diversity and inclusion, which is an immense issue in the United States right now. So those are their two kind of anchor goals right now that they're talking about. So they have moved well beyond just kind of a blanket understanding of what social responsibility is, and have really prioritized this whole concept of diversity and inclusion, and of regenerative agriculture and regenerative products. Next slide. And then the last, I got a text from my 19-year-old daughter, who insisted that I purchase these shoes for her, which are called the Forever Sneakers, which is from a company called Everlane Lane, which is a sustainable fashion company in the US. I mentioned that it was my 19-year-old daughter because the young people, those who have just become of voting age and are in college and even in high school, are some of the most motivated, vocal, responsibly minded people that I have ever come across in my life. It really makes me so hopeful for the future of the planet because of how motivated they are and how much they're educating themselves on their product. So anyway, she sent me this link, and they're now, these tennis shoes that can be completely, they're made of recycled materials, and they can be completely recycled afterwards. So those are just some examples of, that have just popped up into my feed, and there are so many others out there. So this is just to encourage you all that this is a trend that is very much taking root in the US marketplace and in the minds of US consumers. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karen. It has been very enlightening and exciting to see the example you brought on the fashion industry. Just being careful all the time. I would like to make sure that we keep all the questions and we can bring you to panel, because I'm sure that your presentation has generated a few questions in the audience. But I wanted to really thank you for putting this together and sharing it in such a limited amount of time. You've been perfect on the dot, like a Swiss clock. So thank you. So I'll bring you to the panel, but just before we get started, I'll let you all still put your question either down on your notepad or in the comment section. Before we go into the fireside, how you call it, fire chat, I would like to give a small introduction to a special guest that will be added to alongside myself, Celia, and Karen. She's a seasoned fashion and creative industry expert. She has experience over 25 years. She's president of NTC Import Export and Power Fashion, which is the trading and the supply of companies that serve as a bloodline for the retail brands like Bayo, Unica Ija, and vice versa. The brand mason, she's also for the brands that I've just mentioned, she's also the chief creative director, where she leads the design and conceptualization processes of the brands in order to generate quick response and long-term solutions based on consumer needs. The fashion industry is as fierce as ever, but Anna has managed to thrive among the giants. Her years of experience have taught her to adjust, to adapt, and to get the pulse of not just current trends, but also some forward view of what consumer will need in the few years' time. But fantastic, we have her with us today. She has a clear vision, the right perspective, and she will be able to bring us some groundbreaking and also 2 feet on the ground approach to bringing innovation in a circular economy. So I'd like to welcome Anna Lagon. She will join us on the panel. Thank you, Anna, for coming today.
Waste is at the heart of the fashion industry. In today's fast fashion world, styles and trends come and go every season, and the amount of textile waste this leaves us is reaching terrifying levels. Would you believe that around 35% of materials in the fashion supply chain end up as waste? All the unused leftover fabric that only gets added to the global waste problem made us realize that we needed to take action. While Bio has already reduced wastage to 25% and is continually working on sustainable efforts to maximize fabric use, we feel that more needs to be done. We at the Bio Foundation wanted to take that first step in breaking the cycle of waste. We wanted to be part of the solution. We thought, what if we turn the useless into useful? Presenting the Journey to Zero initiative by the Bio Foundation. The Journey to Zero initiative is our pledge to work towards a zero-waste future and be the leading proponent of sustainable fashion in the Philippines. The initiative aims to reduce textile waste, raise consumer awareness, and promote earth-friendly fashion practices to producers, designers, and end users alike. So how does this initiative work? First, we take in fabric scraps donated by Bio and its affiliate brands. Then, we collaborate with fellow zero-waste advocates to turn these scraps into upcycled fabric. Once our partners have turned the scraps into reusable fabric or items, Bio Foundation buys them back and sells them to more fellow sustainable-minded brands, designers, and companies who will in turn use them to create mindfully thought-out designs from clothes to bags, accessories, toys, and even furniture. And, in line with our thrust to uplift the Philippines and the Filipino, all the proceeds generated from the Journey to Zero initiative will be used as a seed fund to help young aspiring Filipino artists finish their studies and pursue their passions. We strongly believe that a zero-waste future is possible, so we invested in advanced technology that will reduce waste and allow us to shred, cut, and prepare the scraps for more efficient use by our sustainability partners. Not only do we reduce waste with this endeavor, but we also empower Filipino artisans and provide sustainable livelihood to local communities. We at the Bio Foundation believe that this journey is not ours alone. For us to achieve our goal of a zero-waste future, we need your help in being more mindful when it comes to fashion. Hopefully, with this initiative of ours, we can help spark a movement that weaves sustainable fashion into the mainstream fabric of Filipino culture and create lasting change. One that cares for Mother Earth above all, inspires excellent Filipino craftsmanship, empowers local traditions and communities, and uplifts the lives of Filipinos all over. So, we invite every Filipino who shares this vision, from consumers to sustainable-minded partners, and even fellow fashion movers and shakers, to embark with us on this incredible journey. Together, we can make the Journey to Zero happen.
Perfect. Thanks, Anna. Thanks for sharing this video, and welcome to the Fireside alongside Celia and Karen.
Thank you for this chance to be part of this learning and sharing experience. Wonderful to know that circularity is on spotlight, as we need this urgently. So more will really have a part in finding ways to somehow audit and check on the way we do things. So I hope with your expertise and the expertise of the other speakers, I'd be able to validate what we have been doing and, probably ask you more about it and still learn a lot more things. We've just been starting. So, yeah.
You have a small presentation, if I'm correct, Anna, right? Okay, so for the Fireside, so my bad. Yes, let's start with your presentation before we go to the Fireside, if that's okay. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Journey to Zero is our first step to sustainability. It was our immediate response to address the negative impact that we have been contributing. Being a fully integrated company, we can control the management of our supply chain, from design to manufacturing and on to retail. Eventually, a program to repeat the process with our vision for a take-back scheme. We have one goal: to reset the way we make fashion. Design then takes a major role in the circular model. It should be able to be redesigned, repaired, or put to further use. So it goes back to the circle. Longevity is key consideration in the design phase. Materials that will go back to its natural state in terms of biodegradability should also come as an important factor. We plan to do this with our transition of our business model from linear to circular. This has been discussed by JF earlier, so I'm really happy to have the same purpose, to transition the old ways of linear to our new circular ways. So our motivation is really there should be nothing that will ever go to waste, or if they do, it should not cause harm to nature. A simple rule that I have learned early on in life, which is now embedded in the way we do our business. The challenge is huge, but we do not let that overwhelm us. First, we focused on identifying the area where the biggest negative impact comes from and made doable changes from there. Production waste was in most part the culprit. Hence, we channeled our efforts on prioritizing solutions for it. Journey to Zero is our guiding principle that tackles both waste in general and the circular economy model. We have updated our action plans from the time that we created the Journey to Zero video, which you have watched earlier. You saw how we managed to reduce our waste from cutting of bulk fabrics with textile scraps at 35% down to 25% less than a year ago. Today, I'm very happy to share that it has gone even lower to 5%. This is because we are continuously driven by the intention to make positive changes by challenging the way we evolve in this journey. We are extending the use of our materials instead of just throwing them out. In the process, we also expand our reach and create connections of new circular models outside of our company. The 5% textile scraps are upcycled through a community of hand weavers. They incorporate our textile scraps into the weaves to form unique patterns. We also help them produce sustainably with better materials and with a more efficient process. This I also learned from Director Celia to make sure that proper materials, if we are really into sustainability, we should also look at the kind of thread that we use and the option to use the better materials to really be consistent with our goals. So we also help them make their own circular model. Eventually, if they can build their own circle outside of guiding them. The upcycled hand-woven fabrics are brought by Bio Foundation, who then sells them to any interested designers or brands who would like to help sustain our livelihood programs with weaving communities. And at the same time, they become part of our circle of sustainable advocates. Noteworthy mentioning is the fact that we also help in keeping alive the Filipino heritage of hand weaving. As we know, sustainability is not just for an inclusive industry. We also collaborate with like-minded groups like the Environmental Conservation Organization, Pure Oceans. They collect ocean plastic waste, works with communities to create additional livelihood, and we buy their shredded and sanitized plastic trash, use them as part of our products, not necessarily for selling, but we can use them for, like, for example, our seats in the stores. We use their shredded plastic as filling, and we use upcycled fabrics also as a cover of the seats. Moving forward, we have plans of expanding our product offering through Pure Ocean, because as you see, plastics are not all plastics are really recycled in the way that all of them will just be melted. So what we are doing is that since they cannot be recycled any other way, we use them as fillers. So there are a lot of products that can be used actually to create this kind of material. We are in a work in progress. As of today, we are able to create a simple format of our circular model. It is our hope that in the near future, circularity can become the norm of all businesses, from deciding to choose the materials to design inception and on to creating products. Hopefully, at the end of the line of the product, they can be taken back by the maker and have them use all materials once again. That is the essence of sustainability. It is an endless circle that provides a link to an ending benefit for one and the other. We hope to build more connections with different communities, to share and continue our Journey to Zero initiatives. There is no better way but now. So we have the passion to love Mother Earth. Once you start living with intention and persevere to do your part, even in a small way, to sustain the only place we have, I believe that we will really have a truly meaningful journey.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. And thank you for the presentation and the video. To make sure that we have enough time for the Fireside Chat session, I'll bring straight the Celia and Karen into the conversation, but thank you very much, Anna, for this. Fireside Chat session, sorry, what a long word. Excuse my French, literally. So everybody, thanks you very much for being back to the chat and the panel here. So I'll start with a few questions, and everyone can cherry pick. And I started seeing the list in the private chat room of a comment and question shared by the audience. So let's get started. I've got a couple of questions, business-oriented, Philippine-oriented. Circular economy wise, which sectors do you see the more prone for circular innovation in the Philippines? So we talk about obviously textile, fashion. Do you have any other ideas at the panelists? So that would be my question number one. And number two, my question would be about the investors and the money available for funding. What are the conditions and what are the players that can provide that type of fundings for the entrepreneurs in the room that would like to pursue circular businesses?
Yeah, well, JF, just to go to your first question, I think Anna has given us an example of how to apply that. She's using her basic materials already on the floor. This is literally on the floor. The cutting scraps are literally on the floor. But that's already as it exists. I think what we are also going after is how do we now make sure that we put natural materials which will become eventually biodegradable into place, so that then your circularity can be easier. It will be simpler to biodegrade them, or easier to break them down so it can become the next feedstock, an input material to a next process. So the easiest would be where Anna's coming from, looking at what is already available that you can already just apply to an existing system. And the existing system is that we have thousands of handloom weavers. Let me just, a lot of handloom weavers, and Anna already has the need for fabric that is of a more sustainable, by definition, that is better sustainable than what is currently available. Just to give you perspective, 90% of what we use in the country in terms of textiles is imported. A lot of what we wear is imported, and I don't mean just finished product. I also mean materials, fabric, yarns. So even the yarns that the weavers are using to weave, for the most part, is imported synthetic material. So that is one place to begin with. You finding what is already available and putting that into what is existing as a production system that has an end product, an end stream or a mainstream to it.
Understand. So we heard textile. Do you have other industries? Maybe Anna, you'd like, or Karen, if you have experience.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I mean, I think the Philippines, in terms of how the Philippines is known in the U.S. market, it's definitely known for all of its different natural fibers and the baskets and the natural fiber home goods. So I think that that's an immediate opportunity. I don't have much experience in understanding truly how circular those products can be. I'm sure there's many ways to improve them, but I think is just starting with a natural material that there's a lot of opportunity there.
And funding-wise, investment-wise?
I think there's a big opportunity for the furniture industry because a lot of materials being used in this industry is actually made out of natural and easily found materials in the Philippines, like abaca, coconut, and these things are also part of our materials in our manufacturing. But surprisingly, most people doesn't really look at it as a material for fashion. But for the industry of furniture, it is a common and accessible material. So I think there is a good space there for more investments.
Understand.
One other area, JF, if I may add, industrial applications. You're looking at, well, of course, cars are not in the best of straits these days. But when you look at your carpeting material, when you look at the what do you call this, the top board of your vehicles, for example, those are made of non-woven materials. And technically, what happens is they're all synthetic. I guess what I'm after is I'm looking at a more natural way of bringing back the product into the biodegradability sphere, the biotechnical process of it. And it starts with your material being of a natural plane that you do not need another technology to reconvert it or to cycle it back. Of course, you will, but I'm saying that it is now going to be more natural in that sphere, less use of chemicals. So if you consider it, the whole, well, Anna mentioned furnitures, but when you consider it now, you're looking at the Pinatex model, for example. The substrate is from the Philippines. The raw fiber is from the Philippines. What's missing is the finishing. So automatically, there already is that ability or that idea that perhaps if that was available in the country, then the whole entire stream can be done in the country. That's a simplified question, but a statement. But I'm saying that you're looking at that technical or industrial material of nonwovens. It can also be used for your surgical masks, for your medical PPEs. That can be now biodegradable versus a non-biodegradable source.
Okay, thank you. So I summarize: textile, furniture, you mentioned automotives, special type of textile in the professional healthcare, and it could be other sectors like fabrics for white linens and all. I would add constructions. Philippines has a large home constructions and building and all the type of material that goes there. We'll have a question on that in a second. Packaging, very important. Packaging, the wrapping. Every single product you sell, guys, whether it is a fashion or a pack of banana, has the packaging around it, and that's another industry that is very local and very prone for circular economies. I had a question on financing. People are not rich in the Philippines, and it takes a bit of capex to build a business. Where is the money in the Philippines to build businesses? Grants, VCs, angels, corporates? Where do you see it? And how to go there? How to get it?
Anna may be in a better position. I'm in government, JF. So I'm in
But there's
government.
money there too. There is money there too.
So we're actually looking for funding on, yeah, the right picks were funded by government. But as it is today, you find that we create the technology, generate the tech. Somebody has to adopt it, and somebody has to bring that into a commercial adoption or scale. So government will fund the beginnings of this. We will fund perhaps, build, transfer, operate kind of a mechanism. But at the end of the day, it's the tech that we are after. So yeah, Anna may be in a better position to. I would say you're correct in a sense when you spoke of the SMs, the San Miguel's.
Yeah. SMORA. I know those guys have, but I didn't want, because I can answer all my questions. I was trying to not put words in your mouth.
Those would be, I think, the right guys to bring into the picture, the conglomerates, and appeal, not necessarily on the, but it's not an emotional appeal. But you were correct when you said that it follows. If you're doing the right thing, eventually that right thing is not philanthropic. That is a business proposition, and we'd like them to see this as a sustainable business proposition, which happens to have a lot of good socio-economic downstream benefits to it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Anna, if you want to add on to the financing question, otherwise we can move to other questions.
I think there's a good synergy between private and government. If only a private sector would be able to present a viable plan for funding, and they can go through government, but do not just rely on government. There has to be a viable business when you present, and don't look at government like just an access for funding. There should be a bigger scope of things, and you can always get in a lot of investors. I believe Filipinos have a lot of money as well. It's just that we are very careful because our market is not that big. Our local market is limited as well because of the lower purchasing power. So careful consideration on that. And I think it's more on the collaboration between the private sector and the government. I think it will work.
Okay. So just to add to that, so you have VCs and funds that are dedicated in the Philippines. If you want to find them, you just type impact funds or impact VC, impact investment. You'll see the name of these companies, the sectors in which they invest into, and the type of business model. For the same industry, for the same business, and the impact you will have, you can build a business that is non-investable, and you will get $0. And by tweaking the business model, you will make it very attractive for investors, and suddenly millions will come. So understanding what is the right type of business model that this company wants to see in order to give dollars and millions of dollars, that's important as well. So that's a source of ideas. Look at their website. They will also tell you exactly which sectors they're open for conversations. They will help. Basically, they will tell you what business they want you to build so they can give you the damn money. And as the best of both worlds. So we'll move into so I'm very businessy because I only believe sustainability. If it's not financially sustainable, then all the rest
Absolutely. We agree in that. Yeah.
We go to the question from the community, and so we have a question from I can see a question, the last one, which is there Ali Kasigan, who says, is there a centralized hub for textile products in the Philippines where local designers can canvas and purchase from the product catalogs? Oh, it's written actually just below. Fantastic tech.
Yes, it's written there. Thank you. If I may, we would really like to see this happen because that does not exist today. We were just having this conversation with somebody yesterday. There has to be a centralized platform so that there is no unnecessary competition or cannibalization of resources or suppliers or vendors. Because what happens is you could have independent ones, and to integrate it in one would be really a fantastic tool to have. But so far there is none. We are setting up an information or knowledge-based portal. This is the Textile, PhilippinTextiles.org. But it is not a B2B. It is not meant for that purpose. It is really for knowledge or information sharing. And we will have that present. Eventually, we should be able to now link it up to those who can or will do B2B but it would be good to see a centralized hub. Right now, there isn't any. That's a business proposition for you, Harley.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. Let me look at other question. Yes, there was a question on the question of a middleman from Anton Sidayo. How do we deal with a middleman and adapt a small business to a more circular model?
I guess we have to define this middleman, because in a lot of cases, the middleman may really be necessary to the operations. If I can elucidate. A lot of if I'm speaking of handloom weavers, for example, you know that a lot of them have never left their places of work. They work where they live where they work. And so they have never been really, not real access to mainstream or to business opportunities. That middleman is not necessarily a middleman, but rather an enabler. You can also change the name. So you could tweak the semantics, right? They could very well enable a better business proposition for the weavers. Obviously, the issue of the middleman here is the one who takes most of the profit and does not really give a lot back to. It's an unfair trade proposition. I think that's where you're coming from. But if you really find a collaborative relationship between yourself and your source of supply, then it's a partnership. Obviously, it's much simpler to say that, but I think what we're saying is you want a fair relationship. It's a relationship based and it's a partnership based. But to completely do away with this in the context of where we are with our weavers or the handloom, the traditional weavers, is not necessarily an issue if they develop a good partnership. That's my, sorry about that.
Okay, that's how you deal with a middleman. You
moderator right here. So Anna will be in a better position too. And of course, Karen as well.
Yeah, Karen, maybe you want to,
I think that with the whole notion of a circular model, it implies a higher level of transparency in the supply chain. Mm-hmm. And I think when you build that level of transparency in the supply chain, it empowers, it has the opportunity to empower people on the supply chain who have in the past been who have been marginalized. So I think that I agree entirely with you that middlemen play really important roles in designing and distributing and marketing products. So it's not to discount them at all, but it's to make sure it's done in a fair way. And I think the more transparency we have in our supply chain allows for greater accountability and fairness.
I understand. Thank you very much for that. I have another question from Isya Tadiar. How can e-commerce become circular? Because that's a question here where the online retailer in this, what role plays online or direct to consumer business model in a circular economy?
Oh, that's a good one. So certainly what we see in the US is that there's more and more brands that are direct to consumer brands. So, I mean, in one way it becomes more circular, or it becomes better, but not perfect, because you're shipping a product once and not twice, right? Mm-hmm. You're not shipping to the retailer and then on to the end consumer. So that's one aspect of it. But I do think the whole notion of shipping products, right? We have such an internationally dependent supply chain. And so I don't know the answer to that one. How do we buy more locally? I do think though that e-commerce is, you're going to have fewer printed catalogs that people are using to market products because you have that information online. You can create digital catalogs. You can use digital marketing tools that have a much lower impact. You also just have the ability to provide a lot more information about the products. Mm-hmm. But that is really, I'm very much speaking like a marketing person.
No, it's okay. So because e-commerce per se, they have a carbon footprint. They're trying to reduce it on their side. They're reducing some middlemen, so that reduces some of the carbon footprint themselves. As such, the e-commerce itself is not really a huge circular economy or linear economy carbon footprint. if you remove the last mile delivery in crowded cities that don't have the infrastructure to cater towards direct to consumer. I look at other questions. So we had a question from Juan Manuel Alisla. He saw some initiative on people building houses made of plastic bottles. How many years? So what is the lifespan of those type of houses? And is that really a viable model? When to use? Are we really saving the planet or by doing that, or is it lip servicing? And
I don't actually know, but I forgot to mention that we have a project now that has been funded. It's called Co-Build Tex. And Co-Build Tex is going to be using the avocado, the banana, the pineapple leaf as a part of the construction process. And they're looking at composites. So we will be working with some construction firms to help us with their equipment because we need to convert. So there will be that, because the goal again is, one is to use the byproduct that sits on the ground that is just left to rot. The other is then to also have something that is more attuned. If you're mixing this with gravel, with sand, those are natural components already. And putting in something that is natural in these byproducts is just a natural mix. So we're also doing something in that respect. I don't really know about the plastic bottle, because the question for this is twofold. At the end of the day, are you actually generating or inspiring more production of the plastic bottle because it can be used to build the houses? It doesn't really help that back end part of the conversation. It's really a short-term mitigation. If you find that you have too many of them, this is how the response would be. But obviously, maybe it will stay for the life of the house, to whatever the life of the house is. I'm sorry, I don't really know the answer to this question, how long it will make the house last, if it will make it last longer.
I understand. So it could be applicable for accommodation that needs to be positioned at a location for shorter durations. You'll have some spots, some bungalows, some areas where the lifespan doesn't need to be 70 years. It needs to be more occasional, more flexible, faster to deploy, faster to move. You could see that due to global warming, raising waters, where you might not actually be able to build for a very long term in some islands in the Philippines, because some of those 8,000 islands will no longer be there in 70 years from now. Yeah. So that's much better to have almost like a Lego home. I won't point towards revolution pre-crafted, because that's not really an example that is for now in terms of assembly made home, that Filipino unicorn. But anyway, so let me look at other questions. We are almost good time-wise. We have time for at least one more questions. Middleman, let me read through which one. Any other question that I haven't asked yet? No, Dale, I think we are good. We are good. I had a few other questions that I wanted to ask, but is there a question that you wanted to be asked and you wanted to answer, Anna, for instance? Is there a question you'd like to plan to the community and to us?
I'd like to have more engagement with a lot of people who are involved in textile and design. If we can probably invite some of them to collaborate with us, so we can do more. It's not a question, actually, it's more of an open invitation, because I'd like to do more, but I'm limited to my practical experiences. And I really hope to be able to expand my knowledge by collaborating more. So if there are anyone interested, we can always open our doors for you and exchange our learnings, and hopefully we can do much more than what is currently done.
Perfect. I'll have some question then for you on how do you approach corporates? Because as I mentioned, circular economy relies on corporates. Corporates can be tough cookies. I think there might be an IKEA opening. I'm not sure. I think that I heard rumors about an IKEA opening in the Philippines. They might source woods locally. They might leverage some of the. It might be a competition from some of the furniture providers in the Philippines. How do you approach the tough guys? How do you approach the SM, fantastic retailer in the Philippines, but it's a giant. So when you're a small three men and women shop, that might be scary. Where do you start? What do you do? What do you say? What do you not do? What do you not say? Any advice? And Karen, you have big like the Macy's and the bad boys of the US, the tough cookies, tough guys to crack. But when you come vulnerable with your impact minded, they might actually become less badass. Sorry for that.
Yeah, we're living in a time when they need the young emerging designers, so they're figuring out new ways of doing business. They're rewriting their vendor manuals, they're changing their minimums, they're bringing products into just a limited number of stores. I believe that all these legacy retailers, right? They are changing radically, right? And they're not set up for rapid change. So I think it's a great opportunity to approach them. So I say, have no fear, approach everybody with a true authenticity of who you are, and never promise something that you cannot deliver. Never. The word no for a buyer to hear, for a buyer to hear a vendor say, no, I can't do that, but I can do this, that instantly raises their level of confidence in that vendor.
So 100%. Saying no is good.
100%.
How do you make sure you get paid? Because there is two things. First, they are slow because they get paid their salary at the end of the month. They can go on a weekend at 6 p.m. on a Friday and have a very nice weekend. Well, when you have to pay the bill, you stress and you don't go on a weekend. And second, they might let you, have an invoice pending for 9 months. Retailers are pretty known for really bad at paying bills and really leveraging working capital from vendors. So how do you make sure as a vendor that you don't fall into the trap of being shortchanged? You ask for money, you ask for terms, you ask for exceptions. How do you negotiate with them, Karen?
So first of all, I think you have to figure out who your target customer is, right? Oftentimes people want to sell to the big guys because it sounds sexy. It sounds like what you should do because that's the sign of success. But so often the real sign of success is having 20 small customers who buy from you every other month. So it's not as glamorous, but it's truly sustainable. So one step that I always start with, really, let's understand who is the type of customer that you should be selling to and focus on them. Don't go chasing after trying to sell to, the West Elms or the Anthropologies out there if that is not who you are set up to sell to. So sell to the small ones. And the amazing thing right now is that it is the small brands that are doing really well in our market, at least, far more than the big retailers. So it also is just smart business right now. Okay.
That's good. Time-wise, we're just on the dot, so I think that it's going to be my duty to thank you all for having joined us for the Fireside Chat side section and the presentation and videos that you've shared today. I like obviously it's also my duty. So otherwise, Ray, gonna kill me if I don't thank the sponsors of the event in the name of the Odobo and the British Council and Odobo Magazine, British Councils, Buen Salido Architects. So thank you very much as well for the sponsors to make it possible, and the Design Center, Ray and the team that are working endlessly behind, our technical partner that have prepped everybody so we look perfectly centered with the right sound, the right face. And so thank you for having joined us. Thank you for the participants for who I think we had more than 100 of participants today that have shared questions. The event is recorded. There will be questions and the poll answers will be actually posted on the Facebook page of the Design Center. So I think we are ready to wrap it up. And I would like to wish you all a great afternoon and a great continuation for the week. Hopefully I'll see you soon, Karen, Hannah, and Celia. Take care of your health. It's a crazy world, but full of innovation and potential.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
so much.
Bye-bye. God bless.
Bye-bye. I'm still in the show. I stay here because I think I'm still in the show, so I don't want to make any mistake. Good. Thank you.